fight in the 11th Circuit. What y'all need to do is you need to take to the streets, and you need to be vocal in front of the governor's mansion on West Paces Ferry.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Kemp needs to do his job. He's not doing it, and I think he's not doing it for his own self-serving purposes. He's trying to hide what he did wrong in the Dominion voting deal when he bought those machines for Georgia, and what he did wrong when he bought the COVID supplies from China.
Sonia, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Lynn Wood, for that. You know, one of the things you said in the press conference yesterday, Sidney Powell, who's a very serious player, I know her a long time. She doesn't blow smoke. She said she had very real evidence about this Dominion system and switching votes. Of course, she can't present that, even though the media is demanding it, because obviously it's got to go through a court process. But you mentioned earlier you have talked to Sidney, and she told you the evidence. Can you confirm that what she has is real? Are you convinced from what she shared with you and what you've seen without going into detail? Did Dominion switch Trump votes to Biden, in your judgment, from what you've seen?
Absolutely, 100%. I've not only talked with Sidney, I've met with her at length. I've seen the evidence. So I know that what she said in her press conference yesterday is 100% accurate. It wasn't done by Dominion per se, but the Dominion machines had a software installed, and it was potentially installed in every voting machine, even though not Dominion. But Dominion was a lock. They had the software in it. That software allowed the voting totals on the count to be flipped. It used the same thing in other elections in this country. They used it in 2018 in the midterms. They used it in 2016, but the algorithms came up short because so many people voted for Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump won the popular vote in 2016. The elections in this country have been fraudulent for several election cycles. This machine and this theory of how you can buy an election developed in Venezuela with Cuban money. Dominion was sold to a company in Canada, and eventually they put in the software from a company called SGO Smartmatic, who then ran that vote through servers, Amazon servers overseas, with a company called Seidel. Then it's reported out all by a company called Clarity. Do you think, John, that anybody knew when they went and voted in Georgia that their vote was going to be routed all over the world,
No.
where it was subject to computer manipulation through hacking, but more importantly here, by intentionally designed software? Nobody expected it. We better get back to voting on paper where we can count them by hand. It would be easier and cheaper than what we're having to do now to uncover the clear fraud that's been perpetrated on the American public.
You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. We're with noted Atlanta lawyer Lynn Wood. You know him very well. He's defended some of the most high-profile people in America, starting with Richard Jewell in Atlanta. He also defended the Catholic school and Nicholas Sandmann, most recently, and many others, and he has filed these suits. So, Lynn, you've seen the evidence. You think votes have been switched. Are you convinced that all of this is going to come out, Lynn, for the world to see in time?
I am convinced. I am convinced that it will come out because I believe that every truth, every lie will be revealed. And it's going to come out, and when it comes out, John, the people that committed this crime, perhaps the greatest crime in the history of our country, and the people that support the overthrow of our government are going to react, and they're going to react violently. So the timing is critical. The citizens need to be prepared for the worst-case scenario, that this will go into the streets. It sounds serious. It is serious. Let me make one last point. I'm a defamation lawyer. I have stated publicly that Brian Kemp and Raffensperger are corrupt, and they took money from the Chinese on the COVID deal and on the Dominion voting deal. I bet you anything Brian Kemp won't sue me for defamation, because he knows if he did, he'd go into court, I'd have discovery, and I would prove that he did it. It's true. Let's see if Brian Kemp wants to sue me. I bet he doesn't. That tells you everything. Sometimes you learn about people not by what they do, but what they don't do. Why hasn't Brian Kemp stood up for the Georgia voters and demanded that this election be investigated thoroughly and a special session of the legislature be called? It's because Brian Kemp is dirty and he knows it.
Well, then what about the upcoming runoff? I mean, one of the things that you said last time, so I got to kind of move on here, Lynn Wood, with this because it ties in. You were convinced a week ago that before we get to the runoff, that a judge or judges in some court was going to rule this entire election in Georgia null and void. You said they're going to have a re-election down ballot because it's illegal. It never got sanctioned by the General Assembly. We had Brandon Beach on our show that said not only didn't it get sanctioned, he never saw it. Like the state senators never even saw the consent decree. It was hidden from them until the ballots got mailed out and they didn't know what was going on. But what is going to stop them from doing the same thing in the runoff on January 5th? Stacey Abrams already mailed out 700,000 absentee ballots. So the same thing is going to happen, right? They have the same voting machines, the same thing. What is going to change on January 5th that didn't happen on November the 3rd? Lynn Wood.
Well, I can tell you this: the exact same fraud will be perpetrated unless somebody stops it and exposes it. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you one thing that will be different, and I believe this. I don't believe the people that went out and voted and believe in Donald Trump are going to show up for the runoff. You're not going to fool Georgia voters but one time. So these people that think they're going to try to, on the Republican side, get a win in the runoff, they're not going to get it unless they undo the fraud in the general election regarding President Trump.
You're right.
Why are they not making all steps necessary to do that? Because I don't think they care who wins that runoff. I think that Doug Collins probably won over 50% of the vote, but for some reason, somebody favored Kelly Loeffler.
Why don't you think that Kemp and Raffensperger care about this runoff, and that would give the Democrats control of the Senate, and if Biden has inaugurated the entire government?
Well, sometimes you can be called a Republican, but you're not. We got a Supreme Court Justice, John Roberts, who everybody thought was a Republican and a conservative, and look at how he's voted on key issues. He hasn't voted conservatively or for the Republican side. So if you get somebody in the Senate that's allegedly a Republican, are they really a Republican? Are they really a conservative? Do they really have the interest of Georgia in mind, or do they have the interest of somebody else in mind? I've been shocked in the last, now going on almost over 2 weeks, where I've learned about what's been going on in Georgia. And it's gotten to the point, John, where you don't know who you can trust. Mm-hmm. Somebody says they support the president, then look at what they say or don't do. Mm-hmm. Somebody says they're a member of the Georgia Republican Party, they should be supporting Trump. Mm-hmm. Why are they not themselves fighting for Trump? Mm-hmm. Something's wrong in Georgia, and I think it permeates this country. I believe over the last 2 decades, Communist China has infiltrated our government by corruption, by extortion, and sadly, with some people, by ideology. Mm-hmm. I believe that this is an overthrow of our government, and the American public are going to have to stand up and fight for their freedom and fight for their independence.
Lynn Wood, in your judgment now, when are you going to get an answer from the 11th Circuit? Like, walk us through what happens today.
As soon as we find out that a final order was entered by Judge Grimberg, we're going to file an emergency appeal to the 11th Circuit. The timing is then going to be in the hands of the 11th Circuit, but I believe that the court will realize the urgency of the situation and the need to hear that case before December 14th, when the electors are supposed to vote for the president. So I don't have control over timing, but I believe that good, responsible citizens, including good and responsible and non-corrupt judges, will take action to try to allow the Georgia voters and the voters across this nation to have their votes validated and to not have an election stolen.
So the key here is getting this hearing and getting a ruling before Georgia seats the electors on December 14th. Is that my understanding? Lynn?
That's correct. And the question the citizens of Georgia ought to ask is, why is one individual voter having to do this? Why is our state not doing it? Why is the Republican Party not doing it? Why is Brian Kemp not doing it by demanding a special session? Why does everybody in the Georgia Republican Party and in the Georgia official, the people like Kemp and Raffensperger, why are they not fighting to have this election investigated and overturned? Why is it one Georgia voter doing it when there is a large group of people in this state, and I mean large, that are outraged by what's going on? Why are the people having to do it and not the people we elected to do it?
Well, Lynn, it's actually the opposite, because Secretary of State Raffensperger, Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan, and now Governor Brian Kemp have done the opposite. They just want to jam this through, like they had the phony recount where they didn't match any of the envelopes. And, you know, I had a state representative call me yesterday. I'm not going to say who, from South Georgia. And he's like, look, you know, you're off with this recount thing because you can't match the signatures to the absentee ballots. They've already been disassociated from the envelopes, and so there's no signature there. Ballots are secret, so they're just going to recount what they have. And I'm like, no, you're missing the point. What we wanted in the recount was for the envelopes, for the signatures to match. We know that the ballots have been separated, Lynn, from the envelopes. Like, we get that. But if you've got 100,000 envelopes whose signatures don't match, or they're not registered, or they're from two states, or they're not here, or they're dead, then you don't know where that 100,000 votes went, but you do know that they voted illegally. And so that then brings the whole election into question. That was what we were arguing for. Well, they wouldn't do that, so the recount became a sham. And even in the sham recount, Lynn, they found 3 counties of ballots that didn't get counted, all in Trump's favor. Now, how many coincidences, Lynn Wood, do you have to have before you say to yourself, this just doesn't add up?
Well, I don't believe in coincidences, so I believe it was all planned. There's another issue that the court needed to look at, and that is the fact that there's testimony that there were any number of pristine ballots not folded. And there's a large number of those ballots where they were filled in with the bubble dot and the circle was perfect. I think they were done by a computer. All you got to do is get those ballots, have them examined. That's an easy analysis in terms of whether it was real ink or whether it was computer ink. That can be done in a matter of hours. But they didn't want to look at those. How did we get a stack of pristine ballots that were not folded, and they had to be folded to put in the envelope, and nobody cares? Well, when I say nobody cares, the people care. But the people that are running this thing, Kemp, Duncan, Raffensperger, and now a federal judge, they don't seem to care. Something's wrong in Georgia.
Lynn Wood, thank you for being with us. I got to read a couple of texts here. The first one here is from Sean, a caller in Delaware. He says, Lynn Wood, you're a true American hero, along with the lawyers for our Constitution I saw on TV yesterday, and I'm so proud of all you, plus these radio and TV stations standing up and listening in the John Furter Show. So thank you for there. And I have many, many of those. We really appreciate your coming on and what you're doing. So basically for Lynn Wood, the next step is you're going to the 11th Circuit today. You're asking for an emergency hearing, and you need that done before December 14th to get a ruling. Your objective here is that the 16 electors in Georgia are not seated, right? Did I sum it up?
Yes, not seated to vote for Joe Biden because he didn't win this election in Georgia.
Right.
The electors need to vote for Donald Trump. Let me tell you one last thing, if I can stretch you another minute.
Absolutely,
sir. Thank you for what you're doing, because here's what's going on. There's been censorship in this country, and now the censorship is reaching to the truth that's being exposed by Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani, and to some extent by me. We're like an echo chamber in a way. We're hearing it on the conservative side, but the mainstream media is not telling the American public about it. Connect the dots. Mm-hmm. They don't want the full American public to hear it, because even people that voted for Joe Biden would not tolerate him winning an illegal election. So we've got to get the word out that what Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani have found is absolutely solid. This election was stolen from us with the voting machines and the software, and it was stolen from us by use of the mail-in ballots. It's not going to stand, not in America.
And you have met with Sidney again, Sidney Powell. You have met with her personally. She has shown you the evidence. And as a noted attorney doing this a long time, you're absolutely convinced that Dominion, somehow these votes got changed from Trump to Biden based on the evidence that you physically saw, Lynn Wood, correct?
Absolutely. Sworn affidavits and sworn video statements. I've seen the witnesses. They're credible. It started in Venezuela. It spread around the world, and they caught America in the process. It was all a plan. That's why Biden never bothered to campaign. Stop and think about it. Mm-hmm. It was baked in from the beginning. Mm-hmm. But we got them caught, and I believe that it's going to be a situation where justice will ultimately prevail in this country. We're not going to allow our country to be like a third world country where people can come in and steal an election and, in effect, steal control of our country and overthrow the rules of our Constitution. We're going to fight for our Constitution.
You believe that Joe Biden was aware of this whole thing? Like he knew what was going on?
I think Joe Biden and a lot of other people in the Democratic Party and a lot of people in the Republican Party, I think they're going to end up in jail.
Wow.
Take a look at the president's executive order in 2018 where he has vast powers to deal with foreign interference in a United States election. He didn't pass that executive order because of concern over Russia. Russia was a hoax. I believe he passed it because he knew what they were going to try to do in the 2020 election. So stay tuned. Trust the President of the United States. He knows what he's doing.